Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us at the IIEA today, Institute of International European Affairs. Much respected organisation. I'm proud to be a member of its Ireland UK group. And we have a most interesting speaker joining us on this occasion in our series of thematics around the relationships across these islands. Mike Nesbitt, who many of us know over his various career itineraries, I guess, along the way. Mike is joining us from his constituency office in Newtownards to talk about a theme that I know all of us are going to find extremely interesting. For those of you who are less familiar with Mike, and I don't think he needs any great introduction, really, not least in this group. Mike is currently Minister for Health in the Northern Ireland Executive. He's also leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, and he's the only person to be elected to the position on two occasions, which I take to be a triumph rather than carelessness. And he was elected to that position in both 2012 and 2014. Mike is a four-time member of the Northern Ireland Legislative Assembly for his Strangford constituency. Previously, he was a broadcast journalist, and many on this call will remember Mike very clearly as one of the most professional broadcasters on the landscape at that time, when he was covering Northern Ireland's troubles and indeed more positively in the subsequent peace process. He was then appointed as a commissioner for victims and survivors, of the conflict before entering politics. And he's widely known in these parts for his principled stand on so many issues. So, Mike, it's an honour and a pleasure to have you with us. Can I just let our attending folks know a couple of house rules? Mike's initial address, which Mike will speak about for the next 15, 20 minutes or so, and the following Q&A session are on the record, unless otherwise stated. You might submit your questions, and we're looking forward to lots of questions via the Q&A function. You're well familiar with that. And the team, Emma and the team at the IIEA and Barry and his executive team will make sure that we pick up all of those questions. I'll see them coming in. You might, when you're questioning, just note to identify yourself and any particular affiliation before we go into the actual question involved. And we're looking forward to a wide-ranging and most interesting chat. So, Mike, Fáilte Roth, us Dublin, always great to have you with us. Welcome to the IIEA once again, and we're glad to hear your remarks ahead of our discussion of the theme.
John, thank you so much. That was a very generous introduction. I appreciate it. And good afternoon, everybody. It's an honour once again and a pleasure to re-engage with the IIEA. I'm sorry just that it has to be virtual, but kind of needs must. This time last year, I would have been down in Dublin in a heartbeat because I was, as I put it, cruising to retirement on the back benches. But events, dear boy, events came along, and I've picked up a couple of roles. So, as Minister for Health, what I realise is all healthcare is personal. So, on the theme of hope that I want to address over the next few minutes, I'm going to be personal, if I may. Some moments when hope peaked for me, and a moment when it troughed. And I'll start with the bad. So I'm going back just over 50 years to the 25th of January 1973, because that was the day when Alfred Nesbitt and Company Limited, linen manufacturers, was blown up. And the impact on my father, who was 49 years of age at the time, cannot be overestimated, because Dad had been brought up by Alfred, who was his father, to the second generation to run the business. And in the moment of that explosion, therefore, every certainty in his life just disappeared. But every responsibility remained in terms of still having a wife, three young children, car, and a house to run, but suddenly no regular means of income. And a couple of years later, studying English literature at uni, I came across a passage in Great Expectations by Charles Dickens when he wrote about memorable days in people's lives. And by a memorable day, he meant a day that shaped the rest of your life. And the analogy was being wrapped in a chain. So if the memorable day was a good one, it was a chain of gold and roses and everything was beautiful. But if it was a bad day, it was a chain of thorns and base metals. And it just seemed to me that the 25th of January 73 wrapped Dad in that chain of thorns. And in fact, that was the story of the 50 years of conflict, which we so euphemistically call the Troubles. Thousands and thousands of our citizens being wrapped in chains of thorns and iron, and having hope for their future removed. My first kind of positive, memorable day personally is very important to me. It was just before 73. I'd gone up to big school, and my confession is this: I went to big school with a reputation as a dunce. Not a word you probably hear very often these days, but in any given academic test, you could bet your mortgage I was going to finish 23rd out of 24. I couldn't sing, I couldn't play a musical instrument, couldn't make any of the sports teams, and I couldn't swim, which meant when we went for the weekly swim, everybody else was allowed to wear their own trunks, and I was given this one-piece red mankini. It was the ultimate humiliation. So in those circumstances, this memorable day arrived, which was a wet Wednesday. When it rained so hard, all the pitches were flooded. And so they sent us on a run round the exterior perimeter of the school. And Campbell College was 100 acres, so it was a long run. And who knew? I could run. I came in, I can't remember, second or third. So they not only signed me up for the cross-country team, this brilliant teacher called David Berwick Young sat me down and said, if you can do so well out there, surely there's a classroom where you can do a bit better than 23rd. And it was the first time an adult or somebody in a position of authority gave me to believe maybe my natural place in life didn't have to be 23rd out of 24. So 5 years after arriving in that position, I left, and I don't mean this boastfully, I mean it just about the potential. I left with an Irish Schools athletics vest in one hand and a ticket to Cambridge University in the other. And what it has convinced me is that in every child born in this island today, there is a spark of ability and creativity and talent. And it is our responsibility as a society, schools, families, politicians, to create the circumstances where that child can find that spark and fan it out into a great sort of forest fire of passion for learning and for life. The other memorable day that I wanted to talk about came 27 years ago, almost to the day. We're going back to April 98. I was a broadcast journalist by then, but I wasn't working particularly out of Ulster Television's headquarters in Belfast. I was in a portakabin on the edge of the car park of Castle Buildings on the Stormont estate where the talks were underway. And if you recall, actually, the deadline was not Good Friday, it was Thursday, the 9th of April, because George Mitchell wanted to get back to America. Anyway, we bust the deadline as we always do. So as the clock ticked past midnight into Good Friday, the 10th of April, 98, I realized sitting in that portakabin that this was going to be a momentous day because either there would be a monumentally historic agreement or 700 days of talks were about to end in failure. So around 2 o'clock in the morning, I went home because I wanted to have a shave, shower, freshen up, change the clothes. And I put my head around the bedroom door, and the sight that I saw just overcame me with this wave of emotion because there were my two boys asleep with their mum, one aged 3, one aged 10 months. And I grew up in the city of Belfast just in time to grow up through those troubles. And I'm looking at those boys and I'm thinking, you could grow up in the same city, but in an entirely different environment. No threat of bombs or bullets. Never will your mother say to you, your dad's phoned and you can't get the bus into town to buy those rugby boots you're saving up for because it's just too dangerous. And I think for me, hope peaked in that moment of peeking around that bedroom door. But for all of us, I think after Good Friday 98, hope was just all around us. Fabulous hope for the future. And I'm not saying we've lost it, but I think it comes in peaks and troughs. And I think back to the Chuckle brothers, Ian Paisley and Martin McGuinness, that was another peak of hope. And if you ask people, well, why? I mean, what did they do for the economy or education? Nobody would be able to say. But the point is, that's not the point. The point is, they put a smile on their faces, sat down, shared us a tea, and gave people hope. And I want in my remaining time in politics to try and put a bit of hope back into the people. Uh, and I do have some hope because, first of all, I think there's a realization among the MLAs at Stormont that if we collapse it again, it's gone for good. And I think we have walked it right to the edge of ultimate collapse. And we've all realized there is no viable alternative to power sharing. And I also think we've developed for the first time in over 100 years a common cause. So let me put it this way. I like to meet the team we have an education team at Stormont, and on a daily basis, they bring up schools and universities, primary, secondary schools, universities. They ask MLAs to spend 15 minutes talking to them. So I would go in, and I always start by asking them a question, which is who wanted this building, Parliament buildings, to be constructed? Because for me, it's a trick question in that the answer, in one sense, is nobody. Because the Unionists wanted the status quo, the whole island to continue to be governed by Westminster. And Nationalists wanted the whole island to cede and come under the control of the new Dáil Éireann in Dublin. So partition was not anything that anybody set out to achieve, and it was a very uneasy compromise. And whatever the merits of it, and I know there are merits to what happened back in the early 20s, there was a fault line here. Because there was this strong inbuilt Unionist Protestant majority, the two outworkings of this were, first of all, for Unionists, they knew you could have an election to Stormont every month. We were always going to win. And therefore, I don't think we reached out sufficiently to our Catholic nationalist neighbours and said, come with us. You're our brothers and sisters. Let's create this together. And equally, I think the minority population looked at it and said, take this for a game of soldiers. I'm not playing your game. I'm not getting involved. In fact, I can't do better than quoting David Trimble from his Nobel laureate's lecture back in 98. This quote, Ulster Unionists, fearful of being isolated on the island, built a solid house. But it was a cold house for Catholics. And Northern nationalists, although they had a roof over their head, seemed to us as if they meant to burn the house down. So we came to a realization after 50 years of conflict that majoritarianism does not work in Northern Ireland, and the only way forward is consociational government or power sharing. Unionists came to realize they couldn't govern without the consent and the cooperation of nationalists and Republicans. And Republicans, and this is where I get a bit of hope, Republicans, I think, now realize that they cannot continue to label Northern Ireland as a failed, ungovernable statelet, not least because they are now leading the government of this place. So suddenly, and I think for the first time, we have common cause in making Northern Ireland work. Now, of course, Unionists have always wanted to make Northern Ireland work. Republicans didn't. But now, both in terms of the internals within Northern Ireland, but also to appeal to the voters in the Republic where they also want to lead government, and also because come a border poll, they have to make Northern Ireland look attractive to people voting in Dublin and Limerick and Galway. I mean, the first rule of marketing is whatever you're selling, make it attractive to buy. It's not going to be attractive if the proposition is please vote in a border poll to buy a failed, ungovernable statelet. So despite our sterilely opposite constitutional preferences, suddenly I think for the first time, we have this common goal of trying to make Northern Ireland work. And for me, it's measured by what I'm calling a prosperity agenda, which is about maximizing the number of people who wake up in the morning feeling good about life, who get out of bed the way we always do, with a sense of purpose, with things to do, who are financially secure, who are seeing their children or their grandchildren well educated, have access to high quality public services, not least in health, who have a standard of living and a quality of life which they find agreeable. Because then they're going to say, give me more of the same, and the society that we're living in is going to be stable. And for politicians like myself. Stability is the holy grail that we want to achieve. And within that prosperity agenda, and this is my final point, John, is my passion to tackle health inequalities. So, and the measurement of whether you're succeeding in that is healthy life expectancy, not life expectancy, but healthy life expectancy. And the worst statistics would be today, two babies are born in the same maternity unit in Belfast, both girls, grow up in Belfast, let's say a mile apart. One lives in an area of the worst deprivation, and one in the area of the least deprivation or the most affluent area. The divergence in their healthy life expectancy is 14.2 years. 14.2 years. In a first world country, a quarter of the way into the 21st century, I don't even understand how that is tolerable. And we haven't moved that dial on healthy life expectancy since devolution started in 98, 99. And it is my determination to at least start over the last 2 years of this mandate, to move that dial. And for me, one of the attractions is I can't do it as health minister. It's a whole executive effort because the international research, which I think everybody accepts, is it's only 20% health interventions, it's 40% socioeconomic, 10% environment, and 30% behaviors. And by behaviors, I mean things like drinking, smoking. So we are part of the UK government's tobacco and vapes bill. And once that becomes law, nobody born after the 1st of January 2009 will be able to be legally sold tobacco. So I've made these points to executive colleagues as recently as yesterday morning, that I've started an initiative which I'm calling Live Better, because who doesn't want to live better? We're taking services that already exist, packaging them up, and to prove the point, we've picked two areas, dense urban areas, one in Derry and one in West Belfast, and we're flooding them with these services. And if we get the empirical evidence, I'm going to go back to my executive colleagues and say, I've made a start on the 20%. Are you up to doing the 40% economic and the 10% environment? Because if we move that dial on healthy living expectations, the population, I think, will understand that we've done something really difficult, really worthwhile, and that will give them more confidence in us. And I think it will give us, I think, momentum and belief that we can do a bit more. And my final thought is on that. I was discussing these things with your health minister, Jennifer Carroll McNeil, and I believe Jennifer got quite excited and was very interested in it. So we're in the foothills of this, the foothills. But what I'm hoping is that we will move to a point where we make this initiative an all-island one. And we will be looking to the Shared Island Fund potentially for some support in that. Because those health inequalities exist in Limerick, they exist in inner city Dublin, they exist all over the island. So why not tackle it on an all-island basis? I'll leave it there.